Hey, good morning, New Life. My name is Daniel Worthey, and I am the Program Director for M18 Recovery. This week we have been in a series called God Can Redeem. And this morning I want to talk to you about how God can redeem your past. I'm going to go ahead and jump right into the scripture here. It comes from Philippians 1:14, and it says, "And because of my imprisonment, most of the believers here have gained confidence and boldly speak God's message without fear because of my imprisonment." I love that. Guys, I'm super passionate about this subject because I come from a very troubled past. Growing up, my father was a drug dealer. He taught me that lifestyle. He had me just very much wrapped up in it at an early age. The first time I ever went to jail, I was 13 years old. I was arrested for drugs and a handgun. It wouldn't be the last time that I went to jail, though. I would actually do 3 years incarcerated before I turned 18. At 15 years old, my dad tried to strangle me to death while I was asleep. He was suffering from a drug-induced psychosis. At 17, I was in an accident and paralyzed my right arm. That really put me in a really dark place. It led me down a road of destruction. I didn't know what to do. And so what I did is I fell back to what I knew, which was selling drugs. And of course you can imagine that mentality would only cause a lot of hardship down the road. By the time I had reached 35, I had already done 10 years in prison. I was literally doing a life sentence on an installment plan. I felt like I was fighting a war that I could not win. I was being fed false information by an enemy that would do anything he could to prevent me from fulfilling the will of God. And that's where my first point lies. Know thy enemy. Let me ask you a couple questions. What weapon is the enemy using in your life? And where will the enemy attack? Is it guilt? Shame? Condemnation? These are the tactics the enemy uses to attack my past. I was always feeling like I wasn't good enough, or like I wasn't like other people, or I wouldn't be accepted because of my past. So I asked myself, why is he attacking my past? I mean, it's gone. It's no longer here. But then I found this. In Revelations 12:11, it says that we will defeat the enemy with the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. You hear that? There's not a comma, a dash, a slash, nothing between the blood of the Lamb and the power of our testimony. Our testimony has power. Our past has power. And that is why the enemy is attacking there. Because he knows that God is going to use it. And so now that we've asked ourselves the how and where the enemy will attack, let's talk about how to combat that. One of the best ways is to allow ourselves to be vulnerable with those that God has put in our lives. I remember one time I was coming out of prison and I was on fire for God and I was ready to follow him. So when I came out, I found a home church and started to attend, and then there was a life group that I was going to attend. I went, and the first day we were doing like introductions and everybody's going around the room introducing themselves. And when it came to me, I introduced myself, but I lied about like who I was and what I did because I was so embarrassed about where I had come from and the things that I have done. And so because of that lie, I was unable to connect with the people who are going to help me continue my walk with Christ. The enemy was using my past and the way that I looked at my past to isolate me from other believers. When I came through M18, there was another resident named Dane. Dane was a master communicator. I mean, everybody loved this guy. And one day, we were sitting outside the church, and Dane was trying to minister to this guy. He was getting nowhere with him. The guy was just completely like ignoring him, giving him the cold shoulder, and Dane's like, I don't know. Well, I happened to look down, and I noticed the shoes that he was wearing. I recognized these shoes. I knew where they had come from. the shoes they issue when you come into prison. I was like, oh, okay. And so I walked up to this guy and I said, you've been in prison. You just got out of prison. And he said, how do you know that? I said, the shoes gave you away. And I was able to get vulnerable with him and tell him where I had been and the things that I went through. Long story short, the guy ended up coming in church, getting some coffee, and sitting down for service. And right there, it dawned on me, man, I gotta change the way that I view my past. And I realized in the moment, the things that used to disqualify me are now going to qualify me for kingdom work. Like, God will use the things that you are most ashamed of to fulfill his will. My favorite example of this is the story of Rahab. Rahab was a prostitute in the city of Jericho, and Jacob sent spies into Jericho. The king found out about the spies and that they had went to Rahab's house. So he sent men to capture them. Well, Rahab had hidden the men on her roof. Now, how many women at that time knew how to hide men? She did. I'm sure she might have picked it up, doing, what she did. And so God used what she would have been ashamed of to fulfill his will. Isn't that awesome? I think it's awesome how we serve a God that redeems. Even with all my failures, God uses the things that the enemy meant for evil, and he turns them into good. So guys, let's remember, first, know your enemy, be vulnerable, and change the way you look at your past. Guys, I hope y'all have a great rest of the week, and God bless.